Welcome to NBA Jam Tatman QC on Fire Edition. Boom shakalaka!
Happy little games. Throughout ancient history, rivalries have existed. All it took was one person not sharing the same ideals as another person, which would result in mass hysteria. Some of the more famous rivalries throughout history include the Hatfields and McCoys, Betty Davis and Joan Crawford, Superman and Lex Luthor, and of course, my nephew Chris and a bar of soap. One famous rivalry that we are going to talk about today includes a typical cat and mouse. The big tomcat was always on the prowl, looking to get rid of any tiny defenseless mice. Today, that rivalry has been transformed into a classic Namco game by the name of Mappy. This fantastic game has its roots in another classic Namco arcade title, but it was also so much fun to play. Where did the inspiration for this game come from? What sounds from another famous arcade game does Mappy utilize? So put on your badges and let's collect those stolen microwaves, because this is the history of Mappy. When it came to the creation of Mappy, we have to go back to the early days of a little-known company by the name of Namco. The company was founded all the way back in 1955 by Masaya Nakamura, with an emphasis on coin-operated rides. He installed 2 mechanical horse rides in a department store in Yokohama and started doing business with various amusement arcades. The name comes from Nakamura Manufacturing Company, but Namco sounds oh so much better. It entered into the video game industry in 1974 after acquiring Atari Japan, who had struggled to find its foothold in its own country. The first commercial release was GB, but it followed that up with a number of major arcade hits, including 1979's Galaxian and the arcade game that would change the world as we knew it, Pac-Man, in 1980. Typically, there would be multiple Pac-Man cabinets due to the high demand for the game. Arcade games were everywhere, from gas stations to grocery stores to funeral homes, because apparently people were dying to play these games. Namco would go on to produce even more successful games after Pac-Man, including Rally X and one of my all-time favorite shooters, Galaga. In 1983, designer Eiji Sato had wanted to make a typical cat and mouse game due to his fondness for the American cartoon Tom and Jerry. At this point, though, he hadn't decided upon the premise, just that he knew he wanted these two arch rivals to face off. Mr. Sato was also inspired by the gameplay elements in Pac-Man and wanted to create a game where, instead of a round, pizza-shaped protagonist being chased by a ghostly individual, it would involve cats chasing mice. It was at this point that Mr. Sato decided to flip the script and have the mouse chase the cat. Since this is an early Namco arcade game, it runs on the same hardware as Super Pac-Man, but has been modified to support horizontal scrolling. Unlike Pac-Man, though, this game did have a backstory. Besides the game's design from Mr. Sato, the artwork was done by Hiroshi Ono, who had designed a number of pixel art for games such as Dig Dug and Galaga. Speaking of which, the designer of Galaga, Shigeru Yokoyama, even dubbed him the authority on pixel design for arcade games. When it came time to design the look of this dynamic cat and mouse duo, Mr. Sato simply had to look in-house. A few years prior, there were a couple of tin robots created by Namco. The Goro robot came first in 1980, and Mappy, which is simply dubbed the maze-solving robot, in 1981. He liked the look so much that he didn't change a thing and even used the same names. As far as the origin of the name Mappy, I'll let 4-year Okinawan resident Retro Rob explain.
Thank you, good sir. As for the name Mappy and its origin stories, there are two theories. The most prominent one from the Meiji era, where many police officers were from the Satsuma domain, so they were derisively called Satsumapo. Over the years, it was shortened to Mapo and then just Mappo, as it has also been said that it comes from the American occupation of World War II, where military police wore helmets that said MP. They were said to be referred to by the Japanese as Mapopo, so the Americans couldn't understand what they were saying. And now, back to you, Pat.
That toe-tapping music you get while playing this game was composed by Nobuyuki Onogi, who had worked on a number of other titles such as Pole Position and Xevious. The arcade cabinet was a thing of beauty with its unique design and its huge topper, letting everyone in the arcade know exactly where Mappy was. Mappy was released in the arcades in 1983. As the story goes, you take control of Mappy, who is a police mouse on a quest to recover all the stolen loot that those dastardly Meowkies have taken. These sneaky little cats have stashed all their stolen merchandise in the various mansions of the gang's leader. Not only do the Meowkies have sticky fingers, but they also have a fondness for trampolines. You have to make your way through the various hideouts, bouncing to your heart's content while avoiding the cats and retrieving the stolen merchandise. The arcade attract screens even feature a nice sequence showcasing the gameplay and introducing the characters. We have Mappy, who is our titular member of law enforcement, the Meowkies gang, and the big boss of the game, Goro. These names were changed from the Japanese version, but it's likely the name Mappy is derived from Mappo, which is Japanese slang for a policeman. Meowkies is a bit obvious, but in Japan, Goro was originally known as Nyamko, which is a combination of the two words Nyanko or kitty cat and Namco. The controls are simple with a standard two-way joystick and a single button which is used to open doors. Each level is divided into 6 floors, which also includes a top floor where the enemies are spawned. There is no jump button in the game, so the only way to get between the floors is to hop onto the trampolines scattered all throughout. The stolen property that you have to retrieve include televisions, safes, boom boxes, computers, and the Mona Lisa. Similar to other chase games, the goal is to keep track of all the enemies on the screen while finding the best way to collect all the items. There are a couple of tools to assist you in your quest, and no, they don't involve firearms or batons. These are the doors and the trampolines. The trampolines can be jumped on not only for pure enjoyment but also as a way of getting away from the cats and traversing between the floors. There are both regular and flashing doors that you have to use. The flashing doors will emit a microwave which will knock enemies back when it's opened. The wave will travel to the edge of the screen, trapping any of the Meowkies in its path. The number of cats that are taken off the screen by the wave will determine how many points your character will earn. Regular doors do not transmit any waves when opened, but they will push Mappy back from the sheer force. When this happens, he bumps harmlessly through any Meowkies that are nearby, temporarily stunning them. While you are bouncing on the trampoline, you are invulnerable to the Meowkies. Keep in mind though that you can only bounce on each trampoline a certain number of times before it breaks. If this happens and you fall, you lose a life. If you come into contact with any kitty cats, you will also die. The leader of the gang is Goro, and to be expected, he is quite sneaky. Sometimes he will hide behind the merchandise, and if you happen to pick that one up, you are granted an extra 1,000 points. On certain levels, you'll notice bells at the top of the screen, which can be used to paralyze Meowkies on trampolines. Also, if too much time has taken place on a certain level, Gosenzo will appear from the very top floor. Unlike regular cats, Gosenzo can kill Mappy even on the trampoline, so you have to be quick when clearing each level. There are 4 different mansion layouts that will increase in difficulty. There are also bonus rounds littered throughout in which you have to collect every balloon, including the final large blue Neomco balloon, before time runs out. The pixel art is fantastic with some extremely cute visuals and vibrant colors. The audio features some recycled sounds from games such as Galaga, but they fit in here perfectly. The upbeat main theme has been living rent-free in my head for a number of years. I didn't play this game a whole lot in the arcades back in the day, although you could never miss that giant topper. I started becoming more fond of this game with the Namco collection on the PlayStation and have been a huge fan of the game ever since. It is a lot of fun to play, but it also adds a bit of strategy when it comes to the scoring and just staying alive. When Mappy was released here in the States, it was not that big of a hit. However, in the land of the rising sun, it was absolutely huge. A number of licensed products for Mappy have been produced over the years, including t-shirts, badges, keychains, figures, watches, and even a cool tabletop mini arcade game. Back in 1983, there was even a Mappy LCD handheld game. Unbelievably, there was even a Mappy home pregnancy test. To go along with the home pregnancy test, we have the Mappy lighter, which is in the shape of a handgun. Believe it or not, there is even a Mappy slot machine that was released in Japan, which looks and sounds really cool. If Mappy was popular enough to get a slot machine in Japan, it was almost a bona fide guarantee that he would get a pachinko machine as well. The game was known as Mappy Park, and it was released in 2002. The game features Mappy, Goro, Meowkis, and a number of small metal balls that need to be launched in order to gain points. A webcomic by Shifty Look was also released in 2011, which evolved into a 13-episode series of animated shorts. It has to do with Mappy being a disgraced cop, having been kicked off the police force due to botching one of the run-ins with Goro and the Meowki gang. The game includes a number of other characters from various Namco properties, including Dig Dug, Rolling Thunder, and Time Crisis. The animation is very basic, but it does get the job done. I found the episodes pretty entertaining, so you just might want to check it out. By the way, the rendition of the intro tune from the game is extremely cool and very addicting. Due to the overwhelming success of the original arcade title in Japan, it was inevitable that a follow-up would be released. Hopping Mappy came out in 1986, and the gameplay is quite different. This time around, you control the micro-police mouse Mappy as he bounces on a pogo stick around the Meowkis collecting the various treasures. The Meowkis will patrol horizontally and vertically, although Goro is present as well, and he does patrol in a zigzag pattern. There are 8 treasures that you need to grab in order to complete a round. Every so often, a treasure box will appear, scattering several assorted bonus items across the screen, which offer you a number of power-ups, including freezing the enemy, making them vulnerable, etc. The only button that you have at your disposal is a speed-up button, which will quite obviously speed up your movement. There are also bonus rounds as well. To me, the gameplay is a bit reminiscent of Q*bert, which could be where the inspiration came from.
愛する家族のために急げマッピー。2001年のクリエイターたちへマッピーランドカラフルに新発売。
The very first Mappy game released exclusively for the Famicom and Nintendo was Mappy Land. This attempted to expand upon the original concept with a wider variety of levels and different play mechanics. This time around, Mappy is attempting to win over the heart of his soon-to-be Hoochie Mama Mappico. The basic concept of Mappy is present here, in which you have to collect a certain number of items before you can proceed to the next round. You still have trampolines and the Meowkies are still out to get you, but you also have ladders to climb up and down. To make it just a bit more difficult, there are also dead ends on certain platforms, so you have to be careful. There are unique traps spread throughout the game for you to use, such as zip lines, punching bags, and cannons. The Meowkies can also be distracted by toys, but this will not work on the big bad Goro. Since he is used to taking bribes, only coins can distract him. The graphics have that early Famicom look, and even though the game came out 3 years after the arcade original, they are nowhere near as attractive. The music is missing its iconic theme as well, but what we have is not too bad. However, it's still a fun little game to play, especially if you love Mappy. Continuing the story of Mappy and his family, we were presented with Mappy Kids in 1989. Since Mappy Land told the story of two mice in love, it was only a matter of time before the Mappy family tree would grow. Mappy Kids follows the son of Mappy who is looking for a wife, but she will not marry him until he becomes a good provider for his family. The game is a standard 2D platformer which takes away a bit of its charm in my opinion. What is cool though is that it does feature 2 players simultaneously, which is a nice touch. The goal is to reach the end of the level while watching out for all the various Meowkies and obstacles. The controls are simple, with you having the ability to jump and kick. Also, while in midair, you can tap the jump button rapidly, which will make your character hover and slow his descent, similar to Pac-Land. This time around, you do have a health bar, which does make the game a bit easier. There are also a number of treasure chests to open as well. Inside are coins, rings, crystals, etc. There are also hearts you can pick up to restore some of your energy, as well as roller skates which will increase your speed. For a platform game, it's pretty much run-of-the-mill, so if you are interested, there was an English patch that was released back in 2013, since this game was only released for the Japanese Famicom. In 1995, as part of the Namco Classic Collection Volume 1, Mappy Arrangement was released. This arcade exclusive featured an original or arranged version which played very similar to the arcade original. The objective is to retrieve all the stolen items on each stage while avoiding the cats and other obstacles. The graphics and music have been updated and they look and sound great. It keeps the basics but updates them ever so slightly. The game also features a 2-player co-op mode with the first player controlling Mappy and the second player controlling Mappico. However, this does make the gameplay screen very small. Some stages now have levers which will send your player to the floor above him. Also, after levels 12 and 25 are boss fights with a Goro robot, which is a nice callback to the early roots of the franchise. There is also a hidden mode allowing you to change the graphics, turning Mappy and the Meowkies into realistic mice and cats. There were some mobile games that were released afterwards that have unfortunately been lost to time, including Teku Teku Mappy, which was released in 2003. Apparently, this is a puzzle game similar to Pipe Mania, where the player has to build a path for Mappy to walk across. Another one that was lost was Mappy D Puzzle, which was also released in 2003. The series would lay dormant for 13 years until Mappy Showdown was released in 2016 for mobile devices everywhere. This utilized the basics of the original game but used individually designed levels in landscape format. Similar to the original, you still have to collect all of the items to progress to the next stage. The enemies are also defeated by the microwave doors and bells, but other traps are also available, such as rolling barrels. Certain levels will flood the screen with enemies, including of course Meowkies and Goros, but then you will have other enemies from various Namco games, such as the Ghost from Pac-Man or the baddies from Dig Dug. Certain levels also have bosses as well. This was another free-to-play game which involved getting new costumes for Mappy, such as the suit Dig Dug wears. 2018 gave us Touch the Mappy, and, contrary to popular belief, this is not an erotic title. This was another touchscreen game which was actually designed by many of the early development staff from Namco, including Mr. Sato and Mr. Ono. Originally, the game was going to star Goro, but it was changed in the final product back to Mappy. The gameplay is a bit different in that you don't actually control Mappy, only summoning temporary platforms for him to walk on. Since he walks forwards and backwards, these platforms have to be placed so he can access all of the stolen items. As you would expect, making contact with Goro or any Meowkies will kill him. There is a 3-star ranking system for each level. If you get all of the level stars, it unlocks a portion of pixelated Famicom box art. An updated version entitled Touch the Mappy with 80 stars was released a couple of years later, but several new characters could be played, including Dig Dug and Pac-Man. The enemies, designs, etc. were also changed accordingly. Another mobile game that was released in 2011 is Mappy World. This is another game that has apparently been lost to time, but it did feature Mappy traveling the world with gameplay reminiscent of the arcade original. You have to retrieve the stolen items from the Meowkies while traveling the world, including jungles, pyramids, snowy mountains, and pirate ships. Mappy was not just confined to his own series in the world of video games, but has also made a number of cameos throughout the years. Either he or his cronies have appeared in over 50 different video games, so here is just a sampling. His first ever crossover appearance can be seen in Stage 1 of the 1985 NES title Battle City, with a map looking very much like Mappy. He appeared in a Blink and You'll Miss It cameo in the PlayStation light gun shooter Point Blank 3. He has also appeared numerous times in the Ridge Racer series, including having his own special car in the game R4 Ridge Racer Type 4. The Japanese exclusive arcade game Tinkle Pit features a number of characters from previous Namco games such as Pac-Man, Galaga, Xevious, and of course Mappy. You can also see him floating along in the bonus stage of the arcade version of Marvel Land. Everyone's favorite mouse with a badge also appears in the PlayStation 3 game Nobi Nobi Boy. Mappy is going for a nice leisurely stroll as you make your way through the level. The feline fury of Goro can also be seen in the background riding a pig and riding a bike. As I mentioned, The game was extremely popular in Japan, with a number of home conversions made available. A lot of these were on the popular Japanese computers at the time, most of these converted by Denpa. Similar to other popular arcade games though, there were a number of knockoffs and clones that were made to cash in on Mappy's popularity. Here are just a few examples. 1983 saw the release of Little Gang for the FM7 in Japan, and there's no getting around it. This is clearly Mappy in everything but name. The ColecoVision received a port in 2016 which looks to be based off of the original MSX version. This turned out rather well, although the sprites are strictly single color. The music is good and it plays well. 2018 saw the wizards at Champ Games once again pull a rabbit out of their hat and gave us this spectacular version of Mappy. Everything from the track screen to the excellent music is here, although there is a bit of flickering going on. It is possible it could be an emulation issue, but overall, I cannot believe how accurate this conversion turned out to be. The homebrew scene even went back and reworked the NES version, giving it better sound and more accurate graphics and colors. This puts it more in line with the arcade original, and it looks and sounds fantastic. The only issue with the original Famicom release was that the graphics were a bit too basic in my opinion. This rectifies all those issues. It's not arcade perfect, but it's a whole lot better.
重いカルチャーをおもちゃというパックマンゼビウスマッピーそしてギャラが新登場自宅で遊べるナムコット
Now on to the license conversions. The Japanese computer, the Sword S5, turned out a decent conversion on a machine that wasn't really equipped to do so. The graphics look pretty good and the sound is actually not bad. The rendition of the familiar Mappy tune rattles out of the speakers and it sounds pretty good. The controls are slightly sluggish, but overall it's not a bad conversion. The only thing missing are the intro screens and the bonus rounds. Looking at the previously mentioned Coleco version, and you'll have an idea of what the MSX version is like. This version may run a little bit slower than the Coleco version, but overall it's not bad. The single color sprites are still here and it plays just about the same. The audio is decent with music and sound effects while you play. The Super Cassette Vision port does a pretty good job with the graphics, although the colors are a bit basic. The speed of the game is pretty consistent with the arcade original and the scrolling is fairly smooth. The playability is good, but the audio has definitely taken a trip down to Queefer Town. The little audio chip tries its hardest to give us a rendition of the main theme, but it's a bit on the slow side. Overall, if you can get past the screeching audio, this game didn't turn out too bad. It wouldn't be a comprehensive Mappy video if I didn't talk about the Sharp MZ700 computer version. The MZ700 was an early 1980s business machine which did not have a graphics processor. However, that didn't stop basic games from being created for the system. Just for fun, a user by the name of Game Roman decided to see if he could get a version of Mappy up and running on the machine. He did just that. Since there was no graphics processor, all the characters and objects were comprised of letters, numbers, and basic shapes. If you squint your eyes and stand about 35 feet from the screen, it does look like Mappy, but the funny thing is, it does play just like the arcade game. There are basic sound effects and music included, and even the intro screens are here. This was never intended to be released, but Namco was so impressed with the conversion they decided to publish it themselves. The X68000 was the uber sexy, extremely expensive computer from Japan that played all those wonderful arcade ports, and Mappy was no different, as this machine actually received two different versions. There appears to be some confusion as to whether or not these were official ports, but regardless, let's take a look. The first one is known as the Yopino version, and it's extremely close to the arcade original. The sprites, colors, and backgrounds are done really well, and the music is fantastic. It also features nice, tight controls. The other version is known as the NK port. They threw in some extra options such as a configuration menu and slightly enhanced graphics. The music has also been upgraded as well, but personally I prefer the original. One nice little touch for all you eagle-eyed viewers is that the sprites used for the computers have also been updated to look like an X68000 tower. The most widely seen version would have to be the Famicom or NES version. This is an early NES title, and you can tell that the developers hadn't quite gotten to grips with the hardware just yet. While the graphics do a pretty good job at replicating the arcade original, the colors are a bit on the bland side. The gameplay feels the same, and it does feature some good sound effects, but the music is a bit iffy. While the main theme is instantly recognizable, it's a bit on the tinny side. Overall though, it's not bad, but with the aforementioned patch applied, it brings it more in line with its arcade big brother. The Game Gear version turned out really good, although the sprites are a lot bigger due to the resolution of the handheld. This does hamper the gameplay just a bit, making everything feel cramped, but it still plays a mean game of Mappy. The graphics are detailed with nice, vibrant colors and smooth animation. The music is pretty good, but the sound effects do tend to put a quiver in my liver after playing for just a short time. It does control really good though, and that's all that matters. Even the Game Boy received a fantastic version that was included in the Namco Gallery Volume 1. Yes, everything is in black and white, but it doesn't hinder the gameplay whatsoever. The sprites are appropriately sized with good animation and smooth scrolling. The gameplay is fast and the music is excellent with top-notch sound effects as well. Thankfully, the gameplay is just as good. Support was even included for the Super Game Boy. Speaking of the Game Boy, a version was released for the Game Boy Advance, which is essentially just a port of the NES release. Arcade Perfect versions were released in various compilations over the years, including Namco Museum Volume 2 for the original PlayStation, as well as Namco Museum DS for the Nintendo DS. It also appeared on the Nintendo Wii as a part of the Namco Museum Remix. Microsoft Windows even received a port of it with the Microsoft Windows Revenge of Arcade compilation in 1998. This was a collection of games including Ms. Pac-Man, Raleigh X, Xevious, Motos, and Mappy. It was also released as a part of the plug-and-play TV games, which included other popular titles such as Pac-Man, Ms. Pac-Man, and Galaga. A number of ports were also released for the iOS and Android platforms. It's also one of the games included with the Arcade 1-Up Pac-Man cabinet. As late as 2021, Mappy was released online by the Hamster Corporation under the Arcade Archives brand for the Nintendo Switch and PlayStation 4. I'm sure there are a number of conversions that I missed, so if you know, let me know. Mappy is another excellent arcade game from the golden age of arcades. Any chance when I'm out and about and I happen to see it, I just have to give it a whirl at least one time. As a matter of fact, I just played it a couple of weeks ago in Chicago at Galloping Ghost. Look for my video on my adventures at Galloping Ghost coming soon. If you've never had the chance to catch some pesky cats all the while retrieving stolen merchandise, be sure and give Mappy a shot. You'll be glad you did. Big shout out to Retro Rob for helping out with some voiceover work when discussing the origin of the name Mappy. Be sure and check out Rob's excellent series of videos where he discusses all sorts of retro games. He just posted a video where he talks about all the various Transformers games in the last 40 years. The link is down below. Thanks again, Rob. If you like this video, be sure to like, comment, share, and subscribe. Also, if you would like to support me on Patreon, please click the link below. If you would like to contribute but not sign up for my Patreon, you can always click the donate button up above. Thanks everyone for watching.